Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Murray. I am the senior consultant for the DiJulius Group, and I'd like to welcome you back, joining us for another edition of the Customer Service Revolution Conference Speaker Spotlight. This is the show where we get an opportunity to speak with the amazing speakers that we're going to have at this year's Customer Service Revolution Conference. And it is fast approaching. Here we are in the month of October 2018, and this conference is literally 23 days away. We cannot wait, Andrew. It's coming quickly. Let me introduce you to everyone. Audience, this is Andrew Sykes. I am so excited to have Andrew join us today. Andrew has such an interesting background, and the company that he has founded does so many cool things. So first of all, he is president and founder of a company called Habits at Work and works with some really cool clients like Shell Oil, McDonald's, Unilever, just to name a couple of the well-known that you would all hear of. And we're going to dig into that a little bit into our conversation, exactly what they do at Habits at Work, some of the cool things they're doing. Also, and I find this really interesting, Andrew, also the founder and president of Brat Lab. And I want to make sure I get this right, so I'm going to check my notes so I don't mess it up. Brat Lab stands for Behavioral Research Applied Technology Laboratory. Do I have that right, Andrew?
100% correct.
Excellent. I'm interested in that because that's pretty cool. There's a lot of consultants out there that just tell people what to do, but you have a lot of the information. You're generating a lot of the data and the information that you're then able to share. So I'm looking forward to asking you about that when we get into our conversation. Born and raised in South Africa, and really, really exciting. You have a book coming out shortly, and the title is The 11th Habit. We'll touch on that as well because it sounds really, really intriguing. Can't wait for that. So Andrew Sykes, thank you for joining us on the Speaker Spotlight. Really thrilled to have you today.
Pleasure to be here. I'm excited to have our conversation.
Great. Well, let's get going. So here's where I wanted to start in our conversation. I mentioned Brat Lab, and for me, that's really cool because as I mentioned in my introduction of you, there's a lot of consultants out there that focus on improving service or improving sales or whatever the improvements are, but you go a little deeper than that. And Brat Lab sounds so cool to me. I don't know a ton about it, but it sounds really, really intriguing. So can you first give us a little bit of an overview of what you do at Brat Lab and then some of the discoveries that you have?
Yes. Brat Lab is a research team, and we have 3 research questions that drive all of our work. The first is, which habits really make a difference to human performance in life and at work? And the second, and maybe even the more interesting question, is how do you help people to create new habits in a way that they experience as thrilling and in a way that sticks and lasts? And then the third question is, what's it worth to a company if we can actually make these habits stick? And what's the economic value of it? And although Brat Lab is this long-winded acronym that you outlined, the genesis of the name is we think adult human beings often know what to do, but we find it difficult to do what we know. If you think about getting fit or losing weight or learning to speak Spanish, we know exactly how to go about it, yet something gets in the way. And so we're really asking the question, what does it take to make creating habits easy for people?
You know, I really love that line of thinking. In our consulting business at the DiJulius Group, implementation is so key. It's easy to sit in a room and create some wonderful tools to have better internal culture or a better service experience. And that's what we do in our workshops all the time. And then getting out there and making sure that the implementation sticks. And really, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is create positive habits that people are motivated to follow and see the value in following as they continue on.
Right. And you know, the interesting thing is how much of our life is on autopilot or how much of our day is made up by habits. And the more we research this issue, the more we've come to the conclusion it's pretty much all habits. And when you look at the mechanics of a business, so much of what explains what our brand experience is for customers, what our internal culture is for employees, what our customer experience is for clients and customers, all boils down to this question of the good or the bad habits that our leaders, managers, and employees practice every single day.
So I'm intrigued. You learn that through Brat Lab, and you mentioned the questions that you ask, and it's so true. We know how to do it. We know what to do. We can't do it very often. Something gets in the way, and a lot of times that's habit. So I'm just curious if you can kind of take us how your discoveries at Brat Lab go from ideas on paper, go from theories, and then get put into practice at Habits at Work.
Yes. Well, firstly, as you pointed out, Brat Lab is the research arm of Habits at Work. And the role of the team at Habits at Work is to bring all of this research to life for companies. And what we help them to do is firstly identify which habits will make the world of difference to their success, whether that's in employee culture, customer success, or brand. And the good news, I think, is we've looked at this question of brand and employee culture, human performance or productivity, and customer service as if they are four distinct silos and they have very little to do with each other. Now, our view is that each one of them is entirely determined by the habits of your leaders, managers, and employees. If you think about your brand, it's really the experience that customers have of dealing with you. And that's based on how people speak to you, how they listen to you, how they deal with your problems, the habits of service. And it's the same thing with employee culture. Our experience as employees is determined by how the people around us treat us, and in particular, how our leaders and direct managers treat us. So it turns out that solving brand and customer service and employee culture all end up being the same problem, which is which habits do we want our company and employees to practice and be known for? And then how do we bring those to life? And that's what Habits at Work really focuses on, is training and development of teams to help them get clear about these habits, but then figure out how to actually attain these habits and make them stick, which is the hard part that I think people wish for, but don't have a good answer to. How do I do that?
That's interesting. And that's a big issue for a lot of people. How do they get that to take place? So really, really fascinating work that you have done and helped your clients with. One thing I wanted to ask you, Andrew, because I know that you are also an authority on wellness. That's something you speak on as well when you're out there speaking, not only about Habits at Work or Brat Lab, but also do some talking on wellness. And a lot of the audience that comes to the Customer Service Revolution Conference, as you know, they're dedicated to a better customer experience, whether that be external customers or internal customers. That's already a focus for them. And some of them are considering maybe taking a jump into a wellness initiative. I'm just curious, since you are an authority on this, what are some of the things you'd recommend a company consider before they actually go ahead and take that dive?
Okay, awesome question. Now, perhaps I'll start with a definition, which is that from our point of view, we talk about wellness as something bigger than simply the health of your employees. And we think about organizational wellness as a whole. And the metaphor that works for this is the idea of a sports team and how prepared your players are to play an awesome game, or in the game of business, how fit and ready they are to show up and do an amazing job for your customers. And we think it is self-evident, although it is massively supported by the research, that if you have a team of employees, frontline employees in particular, who show up every day well-rested and energized and free of stress, or with their stress under control, and they really are bringing their entire selves to work, full of energy, it's a lot easier to get them to serve your customers than if they're dragging themselves to work, they're distracted by financial concerns, they're dealing with a health issue. It just robs a company of so much of the joie de vivre and the life and the spirit of employees that we want them to take to our customers. So I don't really see a difference between the concepts of employee wellness and the drives for customer service and brand. Does that make sense?
It really does. Excellent point. I think very often in corporate America, when we hear the term wellness, we very often start thinking of healthy snacks in the vending machines and maybe a walking club. And it's not, as you're mentioning, it's not necessarily that full body of who we are as individuals, and making sure that we're at our best to provide our peak performance.
And it's a little interesting to think about why companies need a wellness program in the first place. You might argue that the way we've designed work often has as a consequence that people leave work stressed out and tired, and they don't sleep well as a consequence, and they're eating badly on the road if you're a salesperson. And so, in a sense, wellness programs are sometimes an apology for the impact that work has had. And our big ask of companies is, can you imagine what your workplace would look like if it was built as healthy from the ground up? Not only in the service of your employees, but as a place in which employees became healthy in the service of your customers.
That's really a great point. I like that a lot, and I have not thought of it that way myself, that wellness is really kind of a cause and effect versus something that should be there from the start. I really like that line of thinking.
And the truth is, for most companies, employee wellness is important, but not priority number one, because even though there is research and it seems self-evident that healthy employees will do a great job for your customer, what's the priority? Customer service, revenue, operational efficiency, profits. So it's one of the reasons why we talk about employee wellness as the 11th habit that follows the other 10 habits that we think make you an awesome employee for your customers. The other reason we talk about it as the 11th habits, it's the one we tend to get to when it's almost too late, that idea of the 11th hour. It would be wonderful in a perfect world if we could invest in our employee health first and then worry about their performance. The reality is, if you're not helping someone to be better in life, be better as an employee, you probably haven't earned the right to talk to them about their health. Certainly not in the context of work.
Excellent point. And a great segue, Andrew. Let's talk a little bit about the 11th habit, if we could, since you brought up. And can you give us a little understanding of you mentioned how you have the 10 habits of being successful that you've already identified and you talk about, and the 11th it sounds like the one that we don't always get to. Can you expand on that a little further?
Yeah, and the business that we run at Habits at Work helps salespeople and customer success agents and leaders and managers focus on what we think are the top 10 habits that improve performance for any job. And they're very basic habits like listening empathically, or asking powerful questions, or making and delivering on promises that build trust. So they're fundamental things that make you excellent as a human being, a contribution as an employee, and allow you to build relationships, sell more, create solutions to customer problems, the kinds of things that businesses would say define performance in most jobs. And those 10 are well researched and companies love implementing them. And then comes this 11th one, which is making sure that people show up prepared to be good listeners and to run high performance meetings by focusing on what energizes them. And as I said, inside the 11th habit, it's really a collection of things: exercise and sleeping and mindful meditation and eating healthily. The traditional things we think about as elements of an employee well-being program, but our view of them is that they should be built into the very fabric of your business, not something that's apart from your business or bolted on as an afterthought that you should do. After you leave home at 7 o'clock, please go to the gym so you come back to work tomorrow energized. Our vision is that those things get built into our design for the business and our design for customer service and sales success.
So if I understand you correctly, that sounds great, and I'm really looking forward to the book. If I understand you correctly, the 11th habit is really incorporating this 11th habit with the other 10 that we know are needed to be successful, and then making it so that wellness or whatever it is not an add-on, that it's part of your everyday who you are as an organization. Exactly right.
So that you would know you've succeeded as a company if you no longer have a wellness program, because just fundamentally a healthy work environment and the activities you do each day in the service of your customers are done in a healthy way. So there's no program to fix the problem, because the problem itself, work is unhealthy, has been solved from the ground up. And it sounds like an extraordinary thing, an extraordinary effort to bring that about, an extraordinary revolution, but it's not that hard to do if you think about the design of your business in a new frame. And that frame really comes from, I think, our greatest insight at BratLab, which is that where your habit lives is in the environment, not inside of you. And let me say a little bit more about that, because we tend to think, I have this habit, or I wish I had that habit, and it's something that we relate to as a trait inside of ourselves. And what we found is who we are and how we behave is so much determined by the people that surround us, the physical spaces we're in, the business processes and systems under which we work, all of which are the fabric of a business. So if it's true that we respond to our environment and our habits, in a sense, are encoded in the world out there, we can design businesses so that high-performance customer success habits or wellness habits are called from us by the way we design our cubicles, our boardrooms, our call centers. Just really mix the two together, this idea of what habits we want and the infrastructure of our business that makes them the easy default.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. I know there's a lot of people listening that said, yeah, our company can use that for sure. Yeah. And I want to ask you about that, Andrew, because when I introduced you, I talked about some of the well-known companies that you have worked with. Some of them have been around for a long, long time. I've worked with some companies that have been around for a long, long time and go in there and help them create and then implement some new customer standards, customer experience standards. And so my question for you is, and I don't want you to give too much away from your presentation, but what are some of the things it takes to have an organization change habits?
Well, I think the first thing, like in most change initiatives, is an organizational commitment to doing things differently. The second is a realization that the problem to be solved is a habit design problem. We tend to think of customer service as a training problem, or sales success as maybe a problem of having the right tools or the right people. And all of those things are important. But in the end, it's not what you know. It's not even knowing how to do what you know, a skills question. It's, do you do what you know to do with high fidelity every single day? It is really a question of creating habits. And so with the commitment to doing it and the insight that creating brand and culture and employee performance is a design problem around habits, the next thing is thinking about how to design what we call the contexts of your business to make these habits your easy default. Contexts are the things that surround you. You can think of it a little bit like a fish swimming through water. Its entire life is determined by the water, the context of its life. It just doesn't notice the influence. And we're the same as human beings. We don't notice that the person working next to me influences how I think and act. And we don't notice how the design of my cubicle at work influences how I think and act. But if we as leaders take on that we have the power to design our workplace to bring to life any habits in employees in a way that they feel supported and happy with the experience rather than coerced, you get enormous power as a leader. You can build whatever customer service you want by thinking of what are the habits that will please my customer. And the same approach to leaders and managers and salespeople. So we'll be touching on that in the talk, using some examples of how some of our clients and some other businesses have reduced to a single habit question this problem of customer service or employee culture or the marriage between the two.
Yeah, as you're speaking, I just know that our audience is really going to be intrigued by what you have to share and find it very, very valuable.
And my big offer, I guess, is that I'll share with our audience a formula that we've developed for creating habits that I like to say you can take to the bank. That if you use this formula, you can be guaranteed that your people on your team or even your customers will create new behavior, and that behavior will stick and become a habit over time. So that's one of the big takeaways, is not only this insight that habits matter, but I think the real gold is this question of what's the formula or the logic that we can use to design habits creation solutions.
Well, that's great. And one of the things that I love about our Customer Service Revolution conference is it's not a conference where you just get theory and you just get your thoughts provoked, but you also get some real live tools to take back with you and implement. And it sounds like that is something that you will be delivering when you are at the Customer Service Revolution on October 24th and October 25th in 2018. So very, very quickly approaching. Andrew, I have one more question for you, and you kind of touched on it right there. My last question was, as you know, our audience is made up of business owners and business professionals that have an understanding that service or experience is really important to their business. That's why they're here, or that's why they're sending their teams here, because they know customer experience is important to what they do. So that being said, my last question to you is, what do you think are the one or two things that is going to be a really important takeaway? You already mentioned one, the formula. So is there another one that you think that you'd really want our audience to walk away making sure they heard that and they have some actionable notes?
Yes, there are three, one of which I've mentioned. The first is they'll take away a new view of what I call the personality of your company. And if you think about someone you know, a spouse or a friend, we tend to like people or dislike them based on the sum of ways that they behave that we call their personality. And I'll challenge our audience to really dig deep and answer this question. If your company had a personality or was a person, what would its personality be like? And what would you like it to be? And the second thing we'll take away is thinking about personality as really just the way someone behaves. We see that there's this link. Personality is the sum of our habits. And I'll make this all boil down to a question of habits in the end. I will argue that brand, employee culture, customer service, performance, and company personality are all equivalent to the sum of the habits of our employees. And with that insight, then we'll then get onto this question I already talked about, which is, well, how do we create these habits in a way that's awesome for our employees and very sticky at a price that we can afford as a company?
Excellent stuff. Really, really thought-provoking. I can't wait to see you in person. I can't wait for the opportunity to meet you in person. I've only had a chance to meet you virtually through this conversation. So, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fascinating. I can't wait, again, like I said, to meet you in person. I can't wait for the 11th Habit to come out. When can people look for that? Do you have a release date yet?
Yes, it's about a month from today. We're just looking at the hard copies that arrived today, making sure they're looking great, and we're planning our launch. So it'll be perfect timing for when I see you at the Customer Service Revolution.
That's great news. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be pre-ordering as they hear you speak at the Customer Service Revolution. So great news. Congratulations on that. Everyone, if you have not purchased your tickets yet, and we're getting close, so I imagine that many of you have, but if you have not, there is still time at our website. We have limited availability. The Customer Service Revolution Conference is October 24th and October 25th. Contact us at the DiJulius Group if you have any questions, or go to the customerservicerevolution.com website to order your tickets today. Andrew, thank you again so much for joining us. Like I've said before, it was truly fascinating. I'm really looking forward to seeing you at the Customer Service Revolution. And we'll see you in less than 1 month.
See you there. My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks again for joining us. And everyone, we will see you next time on the Speaker Spotlight.